I'm delighted to be speaking on behalf of the committee today. And, Presiding Officer, I'm sure that a few wheels swelled kites by leave bent like drums in the chamber today. Burns Night is simply a global phenomenon, and it is estimated that some 9.5 million people take part in burn suppers across the globe each year. And following Murray Pittock's Glasgow University report, Burns in the Scottish Economy, we know it contributes £203 million to the Scottish economy. While impressive in its reach, it by no means represents the depth, value, inspiration and excellence that encompasses all that we have to offer culturally in and from Scotland. Culture provides insight, perspective, challenge. It challenges us. It is innate. It inspires and innovates, and it dares us to think differently. Indeed, one of the few positive outcomes of the pandemic was cultural innovation through digital adaptations, performances and activities shared with wider and more remote, sometimes international audiences. There is, however, a prevailing irony in our relationship with culture amidst the pandemic. Culture is one of the hardest hit sectors in our society, and yet our continued reliance on it for our mental health and well-being is undeniable. Can I ask how many of us were uplifted during lockdown through a book or a poem, watching a film or a TV series, listening to our favourite songs, or even picking up an instrument, honing an old craft or hobby, or learning a new one? Culture and the arts is our lifeblood, a basic sustenance, even to people who may not think of it in those terms. The icon of Scottish culture, Alistair Gray, once said, "People in Scotland have a queer idea of the arts. They think that you can be an artist in your spare time, though nobody expects you to be a spare-time dustman, engineer, lawyer or brain surgeon." When you think of your own relationship with the arts, I urge you to think of what lockdown would have been without the many artists and the arts, many of whom are freelancers. So the focus of the committee's pre-budget scrutiny was on the culture sector, both on its recovery and opportunities for a more strategic response. I want to thank those who provided written and oral evidence, but especially I would like to thank the community organisations that took part in our roundtable sessions and who have done so much in uniquely difficult times, to either as charities, social enterprises and with our army of volunteers, to protect well-being in our communities. It has hit, as I said, the pandemic hit the sector hard, with an estimated 400,000 potential job losses across the UK. Since the start of the pandemic, the Scottish Government have provided £175 million to culture, heritage and events sector, and the forthcoming 2023 budget commits to investing £277 million in Scotland's culture and heritage sector, understandably focused on recovery. The committee welcomes the initiatives, including bursaries and the hardship funds, which have covered gaps in the furlough scheme. We welcome the commitment to 3-year funding settlements for regularly funded programmes. And we would very much welcome certainty that those funded by Creative Scotland could also benefit from 3-year funding. One of the community contributors to our focus groups wanted a reimagining of the traditional approach to funding, a move away from the blue chips and the bigger organisation, indeed to the haves and not the have-nots. And Creative Lives made a similar point to the committee. They told us professional expertise can kickstart intervention, but without local buy-in and capacity buildings, these projects tended not to be long-term, and any tangible benefits to well-being can be lost. They said as little as a few £100s can make things happen in a local community, and such micro-grants can then have a ripple effect. So we've asked the Scottish Government to explore this with Creative Scotland and COSLA. And for all who work more closely with the third sector, when it comes to the funding of the grassroots and the mainstreaming of culture, was a key theme in our scrutiny. We called for a resource spending review to address how budgetary decisions can support mainstreaming, and for an outcome-based process based on health and wider social benefits of culture. We had a plethora of evidence in this area. May I give one example of Broad Talent, a social enterprise who worked with several schools to make a short film about Scottish education and how it should look in the future. It was supported by the Parliament's own Futures Forum, and I know some members will have seen the film, but the opening lines are, in 2030, the curriculum needs to be about creativity and project work. Our film project was active and practical. We learned best by doing things. In 2030, we should be learning every subject through the expressive arts and projects like this one. As a presiding officer, the committee welcomes the fact that the Government have promised to pass on the £40 million of consequentials when received from the UK Government. We welcome the Government's Cultural Recovery Fund announced in March 2021. We welcome the Scottish Government's aspirations to mainstream culture in its policy making. But we now need to move beyond the aspirations to meet the ambition of the cultural strategy, which states culture must be valued first and foremost in and of itself. It is central to who we are and who we seek to be. So let's put culture at the heart of all government policy making to meet the expectations of a wellbeing society. Thank you, Presiding Officer.
Thank you very much indeed, Ms Adamson.